Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another webinar from EC Council. This time, we're talking about the evolution of model intelligence and security in the world of adopt, defend, and govern. As most of you know, recently EC Council launched the Adopt, Defend, and Govern AI Framework, and we made this framework completely free for the entire world to have, so that we can build far more secure organizations in the world of artificial intelligence. Joining me today are some preeminent experts in the world of artificial intelligence. I'm Jay Bavisi. I'm the group founder and president of EC Council. But joining me is Adam Spearing, the vice president of artificial intelligence for go-to-market of EMEA of ServiceNow. Joining me also is Mr. Madhur Mayank Sharma, who is the VP of AI and Product Engineering of SAP, and Karthik Sundar, who is the framework architect and lead author of the Adopt, Defend, and Govern, and the practice head for secure AI of EC Council Global Services. Now, before we begin, we have a small message for you.
You may not have built the AI you use, but you're 100% responsible for it. Most enterprise AI today is a tangle of APIs, third-party vendors, and SaaS embedded models. Deployed without ownership, scaled without security, operated without accountability. But what happens when it leaks data or makes a decision no one can explain or fails an audit? The blame lands entirely on you. That's not a technology problem, that's a governance gap. This is exactly why EC Council is launching its proprietary Adopt, Defend, Govern ADG AI Framework, a practitioner-led modular framework for designing, implementing, and governing AI stacks. ADG AI Framework enables organizations to operationalize AI through defined minimum controls to establish strong foundations. At its core, ADG AI Framework is grounded in the RE3 trust model. Responsible, ethical, efficient, explainable. These aren't checkboxes. They are governance outcomes that must be engineered into every AI deployment. ADG AI Framework isn't academic. It was built with insights from AI advisory board members across Fortune 500 companies and leading enterprises. It reflects real-world pressure, the kind that organizations like yours are already facing. AI is already in your stack. The question is whether you control it or it controls you. You need the Adopt, Defend, Govern, ADG AI Framework. Because in the age of AI, accountability is not optional.
In the age of AI, accountability is not optional. So I wanted to start by talking to you about the thought process behind the ADG AI framework. As you know, the world does not have any shortage of frameworks. Most of you would be aware that there's ISO IEC 27001, which is a control standard for cybersecurity. It has 93 controls. There's a ISO 42001, which is really for AI management system. It has 38 to 42 different controls. Then there's the NIST 853. It has more than 1,000 controls across 20 different families. And then there's the NIST AI RMF, which is not a prescriptive control document, but it has got a lot of governance functions, and it has got a lot of framework that will actually help you identify AI risk. The question is this: there are so many frameworks, there are so many governance standards, there are so many regulations that are happening all across the world. Everyone is well versed with the EU AI Act, and there are more than 70 different countries around the world that are either creating or adopting AI guidelines, AI frameworks, AI laws. So the question is, why did EC Council build the ADG framework? Well, stay tuned, and I'm going to bring you the chief architect of the framework, Mr. Karthik Sundar, who is going to explain to you the powers behind the ADG framework and why this, in our view, is the starting step of how you can build a far more organization that uses AI. Now, there's been a lot of conversation around AI replacing humans, AI taking over the world. EC Council's stand is very clear. AI will not replace humans. but humans with AI will replace humans without, because the entire world is moving towards productivity. This is not a debate, this is not a question, this is already a fact. The question is, can organizations adopt AI, and can they adopt AI in a responsible manner with ethical standards? And that is really the largest question. More than $5.5 trillion is already been linked to the potential loss of IT or AI due to skill gaps. More than $2.5 trillion has already been spent by the human race in utilization of AI. So AI is here to stay, and there is already a wage premium for individuals that have demonstrable AI skills, certified AI skills, as to those that don't. Now, let me just take a few minutes, and before I call Karthik and I call our panelists, to just take you through a broad overview of the ADG framework. The Adopt, Defend, Govern framework has three pillars. The adoption, which talks about how do you actually ingest AI in an organization. The defense, how do you actually test the cybersecurity resilience of the artificial intelligence in an organization. And govern, how do you put guardrails and governance structures around the usage of AI. And surrounding these three Adopt, Defend and Govern framework are three certifications that we have launched. Certified AI Program Management to help professionals think through how AI should be ingested in organizations. Certified Offensive AI Security Professional. How do you actually hack LLMs? How do you deal with security of AI agents? How do you build an autonomous system in an organization, but yet with guardrails? So it's really hands-on program. And Certified Responsible AI Governance and Ethics is to actually help risk professionals and IT leaders think through how do you implement responsible AI governance and ethics. The ADG framework, which by the way you can just Google, or shall I say, you can Claude or you can open AI ADG EC Council framework, and you'll be able to see, has got pillars around Adopt, Defend and Govern, which will teach you how to build, how to break and how to operate the structures of artificial intelligence in your organization. What's interesting about the ADG framework is that it has got 12 minimum controls, not 50, not 100, not 1,000, just 12. And this is the starting point, because every journey of 1,000 steps starts with a single step. And this is the step that every organization should take, which is implementation of the ADG framework in your organization. So you'll think about how do you deal with AI system inventory, risk classification, separation of duties, so on and so forth. It has got 9 governance surfaces, and Karthik's going to talk to you about this, about how do you deal with identity layer, safety layer, telemetry, how do you deal with the learning loop. It has got 4 harm classes. It's going to talk about how do you deal with operational control, societal impact, how do you deal with systemic impact, how do you deal with the technical operational controls that you should be thinking about in an organization before you deploy AI. And then what is really interesting is that it actually maps the 12 minimum controls of ADG across the NIST AI RMF and the ISO 42001. So you do one single step and you can map your actions across multiple different frameworks and standards. The framework is built for everyone who touches an AI stack. Whether you're a student and you want to build a career, well, you know very well, if you're a technology student and you do not have AI in your resume, you're not going to be as attractive as the others who already have it. And AI does not just mean understanding prompts, understanding building of agents, but it talks about how do you adopt AI, how do you defend AI, and how do you govern AI. The same thing for practitioners. If you're in cybersecurity and you don't know how LLMs work, how you can hack LLMs and therefore defend LLMs, how agents work, well then you're going to be not as attractive as the others who are there. And if you're an executive and you don't understand responsible AI governance and ethics, you don't understand how you're going to be able to map to the myriad amount of laws that are being published, well then, Houston, we have a problem. This framework was built with tremendous thanks to our board members that represent the entire industry. we have got professionals who are all AI experts, three of them that are in this call here today, here to share with you their thoughts, their experience, their war room stories. So a huge thanks to the AI Advisory Board members from large organizations. Today we have got ServiceNow, expert from ServiceNow, we have an expert from SAP, but we also have board members from Prudential and from JP Morgan and from all these various banks and institutions, including our previous speaker, Kathy Baxter from Salesforce. So I would like to very quickly call upon Karthik Sundar to take us through the ADG framework and show you how the framework is actually built, how it can be operationalized, and take you through the DART methodology, which is discover, analyze, remediate, and transform. With that, over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Jay. Just going to share my screen. All right. So, sorry, I think, yeah, everyone can see my screen. Today, what I'm going to be really showing you is Jay has given you the foundations, the definition of what we are trying to solve. But what does this framework really hold? So the governance framework every AI system must meet. I think by definition of that, we mean to say that AI in some sense has evolved over the last 4 years. We started off with assistants, then we saw a good coding agent come into play with something like Cursor, and we started playing around with it. And it went on to sub-agents, went on to orchestration, and today we have a fleet of agents that we can manage. One of the things is everybody is a vibe coder today. If you have an application and if you have the idea, you can get onto a platform like Cursor or Claude Code or Gemini, all such different model providers give you the ability to bring your idea to life. But in that journey, the whole idea of embedding security comes into question. Where are the aspects can I control agentic behavior? How can I ensure that trust is being enabled as a part of my ideation process and creation process? So the ADG framework literally gives you the power. If you are a creator in your organization, or if you have an organization where you have a team creating applications for you, it gives you the basic hygiene principles. It's not about 100 things that you need to have a cognitive load on, but it is about systemic, simple best practices that you must consider for you to have an effective product that is going to the market in terms of security. So let me walk you through the ADG framework. The ADG framework constitutes of 12 minimum controls, not too many, and I believe it's quite manageable. And this can be automated through skills as well. And 9 governance surfaces, 4 harm classes, and 3 pillars: adopt, defend, and govern. What does it really constitute of? Let me give you a breakdown first. Is every place an AI can fail, ADG is covered. Now, if I really have to deconstruct an agent, or if I have to deconstruct an AI system, the fundamental units, the primitive units, boils down to prompt, context, model, tools, and orchestration. You will need to interface with these irrespective of whatever complex systems that you're building or whatever applications that you're constructing. Come back to the primitives, and every input and output needs to use these components. How do we enable security right from the primitive units in your development journey? That's the whole idea. Now, if I can take you back to this, is we've looked at ADG in terms of, are we going to compete with standards? No, that's not our goal. Our goal is to have a collaborative practice, work with industry best standards such as NIST, RMF, ISO 42001, the EU AI Act. We really wanted to align. We wanted to support them to really scale out and have these basic hygiene principles enabled across AI implementations. So we thought about, okay, when we are designing this framework, we need to have a look from the ground up. If I were an engineer and if I'm using these tools, what exactly are the minimum controls considering the inputs and outputs? So that got us to a journey of the 12 minimum controls, essential controls that you must have. What do I mean by that is, starting from MC1 to MC12, very basic systems, system inventory. How does it really map to NIST AI RMF and 42001? MC2, risk classification. MC3, separation of duties. MC4, pre-production evaluation. These enable you to have a good view and keep that as a part of your creation process. How we want to operationalize this is your agent can read markdown files today, it can read your text files today pretty effectively, right? Now, all of these controls at some point is going to be a skill that your agent comes, it reads, it goes back and checks for relevant data sources, and it enables security controls on the go. Gone are the days where we have to look at a minimum control description and look at what's the test of design and test of efficient parameters, and then go after the evidence to see whether you're enabled or not. Using today's agentic utilities, you are in a position to just tell the AI, direct the AI in terms of a business logic. That is what the ADG constitutes of. We are going to be providing the skills necessary for an agent to go right to the operations, go right to the design, and enable these controls to ensure that security controls are being enabled at any given stage in the creation and ideation process. Now, moving forward, who does this really cater to? What is the value that we see? Jay had already brought this up previously, is from a business value, just before you even start your ideation process and you get a group of people together, you're going to discuss about what's an effective solution that you want to make for your business. ADG fits that. It can be used to enable use cases. It can help you assist in terms of how do we enable trust right from the design principles. The next is defend. ADG also tells you and aligns with MITRE, Atlas, OWASP Top 10 LLM, OWASP Top 10 Agentic, OWASP Top 10 Skills. It gives you a baseline foundation to tell you if the attack patterns today, if the latest current available attack patterns map to a specific control. Do you have a guardrail in place? Now, that doesn't mean that every system is bulletproof. It just tells you or gives you the enablement to observe and track on how you need to secure your AI systems. And lastly, the govern pillar, it really talks about who owns the risk. If an AI agent is supposed to take any malicious intent or it deviates from the goal, who is going to own that risk, and how exactly are we going to cascade the remediation down your organization? We need to put this as a part of every organization's DNA. It's very essential that ADG cuts across people, process, data, and technology. Data, why I'm emphasizing, is because context is moat. Every organization is going to try and centralize their knowledge base today for an agent to read and take and react and reflect upon. So the agent is going to come into your knowledge-based systems, and it is going to decide at some point what are the relevant actions it needs to take to achieve a particular outcome. So that's where I think adopt, defend, and govern really needs to be centralized. This needs to be horizontal across every organization DNA. We are also going to be rolling out the stack, the adopt, defend, govern, to students and new practitioners, AI and security engineers, and every governance specialist out there. We want to have collective intelligence. What do we mean by that is we want to make the framework open, let them utilize it, let them try and break it down, let them try and adopt it, and come back to us and tell us, hey, there are a set of things that are missing. We are going to fail fast to recover faster and enable the framework to a matured standpoint where collectively the global society makes some benefit out of it. The whole idea is to make the entire framework open and ensure that we are ready to enrich the framework and implement version 2 based on the feedback that we receive from the open source community. Now, just to give you a quick view of what are the core components of the framework, I'm just going to move into the framework. The framework is quite exhaustive, and you will need to take some time to read it out, but we have catered this to relevant audiences. If you're a security defender, you have a complete section for you. If you're a governance specialist, you have a complete section for you. And if you're a board member, we give you the metrics that you need to focus on from a board perspective, right? But I'm just going to take you quickly to what are the essential things. is we really talk about harm taxonomy. That's the harm classification that we indicated earlier. When you're enabling AI systems in your organization, it's not only the technology. Am I only secure at the technical level? But that doesn't give you, it leads you to blind spots. So we really need to have an overarching visibility where operations, technical, societal, and systemic views come in together. But what do these mean is what the entire framework talks about. So I strongly urge each one of you to access the ADG framework, have a deeper understanding of what we really mean by these definitions. The next is the shared responsibility model. I'm pretty sure that each one of you must have known today is a couple of weeks back, Claude had introduced a model called Fable 5. And Fable was deployed. Most of the engineers adopted it. They did put that as a part of their technology stack. And one call out by the government, they had to pull it out. They had to ensure that the model is not available to any of the engineers or any of the organizations who enable that model in their particular workflows. It really goes on to indicate that this is a matter of concern. This is a matter of evaluating as a governance unit, evaluating as the risk unit, to understand that how do we ensure that there is a fallback mechanism? How do we ensure that there is a way to recover business if you're not really tied into one particular vendor? There is a few metrics that you will need to consider. There are a few calls that you will need to make, but one such scenario is what really happened a couple of weeks back. And we also know that the third-party supply comes into play. If you give a tool to an agent, you've given it web research tool, you've given it go and talk to my database, you've given it go and talk to my Gmail. There is n number of attack surfaces that increases at this point in time. So how do we control that, right? Because ultimately the autonomy level, what is the autonomous level that you give off to an agent? That becomes the ultimate question. But how do you control and bring observability and visibility as a part of that, so that you know what is happening? Again, I think we've been talking about this for the last 10 years, 15 years, shift security to the left. But again, this time we are shifting security to the left, but with a broader perspective of enabling observability and visibility. It's not the question of whether you get attacked. It's a question of, if you do get attacked, are you in a place to know exactly what went wrong and how do you recover from that particular attack pattern? And the last is, I would like to emphasize on 11.1, which is the minimum control set. We have given control descriptions and the evidence requirement, and we will also be introducing skills for AI agents to go and pull these artifacts in your given environments. It really lays down what's the control requirement, what's the evidence requirement, how do we go and get it to ensure that this is being enabled to have observability and visibility. Just going to give you a view of the classification. This is something that we already discussed. We are aligning with industry best standards, and this repository is increasing, and pretty much sure that regional requirements will come into play after some time, such as the EU AI Act and the US regulations, and different countries are working on their relevant regulations. We want to be enabling them from the foundation. Start small and then scale into what complex standards or complex frameworks really require. The next is a threat and control. This is something that I've already indicated. We map to MITRE ATT&CK, MITRE Atlas, OWASP LLM Top 10, OWASP Agentic Top 10. It gives you a good sense of, if a phishing were to happen, what are the minimum controls? If an agent is introduced as a part of a phishing campaign, what's the minimum controls that you really need? And if you really talk about valid accounts, privilege escalation, it gives you that view. And if you branch it out to different standards and frameworks that we have created that view for you to ensure that our minimum controls embed at every layer, every input and output, giving you the conditions needed for you to track down and enable them. So I think that's the gist of the framework. I've covered it across people, process, data, and tech. And we want to bring this to you, into your hands. So please do read it. Please do try and enable it, and come back to us with any feedback, and we'll be happy to walk the journey with you. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Karthik. That was great. All right, we have a lot of questions coming up. Karthik, you can stop sharing the screens. Let's start with the actual conversation. This is really interesting. So I wanted to start with first Adam, right? Adam, you are the man behind the, as far as this EMEA is concerned, for responsible for the implementation of AI, and you've seen so many customers. You and I have talked, and let's start with some war room stories first, right? Because everyone thinks, many of the C-suite that I've been in conversation with, they think when we talk of AI, you'll be surprised. Some of them will think, yeah, we need to have an enterprise license of Claude, and we're gonna have some kind of a control per se, right? To the audience, as we are speaking, there's going to be a prompt on the screen. Please feel free to provide your response in the survey, and that will actually help us understand where you are. I also see questions coming up. Let your questions come. I'll do my best to get your questions to the panelists. But Adam, let's start with some war room stories. Talk to us about the real world. You are out there implementing AI into organizations. Tell us, what have you seen that has been bizarre?
Well, I guess we've seen what I would call the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI deployments. And on the bad side, it's this unconscious incompetence where you are seeing the benefits that the agents can provide, but not thinking carefully about all the risks that it can introduce. And like any technology, there's a balance between getting that risk right. And I think I've seen organizations put AI agents into production and then lose track of what they're doing, lose track of what's happening in the organization. And sometimes those agents will accidentally go off and do certain things. And I've actually seen, and sometimes it can happen maliciously, where an external actor has managed to gain access to the agent through some means and deliberately targeted the agent to, for example, access PII information, data that it shouldn't get access to. So that's on one extreme. And then on the other extreme, I've seen people who really think this through. And some of the things that we talk a lot about are things like role-based access to data, the whole observability that you talked about there in terms of, when we've got physical employees in the office, we know what they're doing. We've got access to their badge and their pass. We check their browsers. We have MDM clients on their phones. You need the same principle applied to the agents. And the good ones are doing that. But they're putting that best practice into place before they start rolling the agents out. So this capability becomes an enabler rather than a retrospective inhibitor. So I think those are the organizations that are thinking through. And the ones that are stuck in the middle are terrified because they don't have the trust in the technology yet, which is why this framework is so important and why we, as a cross-industry body, have come together to help people get the benefits, but mitigate the risks. And that's what we're trying to do, mitigate. You can never get it to zero, but the closer you get those risks to zero, the better. So yeah, we're seeing a whole range of that capability, and it's regardless of industry, right? Whether you're regulated or unregulated, nobody wants a rogue agent accessing information and sending it off somewhere to the web. And we've all read published stories about that happening. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of that.
Thank you, Adam. That was really pertinent. Let me jump real straight to Madhur. Madhur, you're Vice President of SAP. You're based in Singapore, right? When we talk about the ADG framework, I mean, let's be honest, there are two groups of organizations. Well, there are really three. Those that are have-nots, they have no clue what AI is. They do not use AI. Probably they would say we've got a GPT or a Claude at most. Then you have the far end, the right end organization like yours, like Adam's. You kind of figured it out. You guys have 42,001. You've got teams after teams that are dealing with governance, that are dealing with implementation. And then there's this mass amount of people in the middle that are kind of figuring out, don't really know how we should move forward, but they all want AI, right? How do you see the implication and the application, really, the application of an ADG framework to an organization like that, and what would the implications be if they were able to do that as a starting point?
Jay, I mean, you're spot on. There are three sets of customers out there, and organizations out there, and we realize that differential in the knowledge gap and the expertise these organizations have. Let's talk about the bulk, which is the middle, right? Where they want to have, but they're still stuck with the legacy processes, legacy's way of developing their capability, and like following a legacy way of implementing checks and balances, right? You the software or capability in a traditional SDLC form, and then bringing it to the production and going to the traditional way of security, compliance and availability and whatnot. This everything changes when it comes to you talk about rolling out AI capabilities within your landscape. The entire compliance and governance capability has to be relooked and reframed for all of your AI agents and AI features which you want to roll out in production. The traditional way of doing your quality testing or security testing has to evolve, and organizations they are right now in the process of understanding how do they gain that knowledge, how do they build that expertise of implementing those checks and balancing, bringing any idea from concept prototype to a production landscape. So a framework like this can really help and get the head start, get a boost to the organization that they don't need to, invest huge amount of resources and time in order to build that know-how and capability. You have something which is already kind of a world-class framework available. All they need to is figure out how they can adapt within their organization, within their processes, and of course they can tweak here and there which fits best to their development and rollout process, and implement these best practices. And there are tons of tools out there which they can use to fit into this framework and build those automation capability, right from identifying any particular agent all the way building the governance around it, then in production, and then lifecycle managing that particular AI or agent capability. So yes, bulk of the organizations are in that space, and frameworks like these can really help them give a head start and accelerate that journey towards adopting the AI and then reaching their wish list.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madhur. In fact, the earlier poll that was out there, right, was very clear, right? More than 56%, majority of the attendees have confirmed that the largest gap that is in the organizations are deployment is going ahead of governance, and that's a major problem. Everyone is shooting first and then asking questions as to, okay, why did we shoot and what are the implications, right? Let's take another poll here, which talks about the layer that represents the biggest gap in the organization. And I can almost certainly tell you from at least my experience, it's going to be the number one. The people is the largest conversations I'm having. In fact, PwC released a report that I was reading just recently that said more than the gap between those that have got AI skills and demonstrable AI skills, being a workforce development institution, obviously certification is one way of getting there, and those that have non-demonstrable is more than 60% now. It used to be 50%, but there is a severe shortage, right? Every organization like EC Council Global Services get calls from its clients saying that we need talent, and here we go. Look at the skill, right? We've got more than 57% say human skill is the number one problem. But Adam, I want to come to you because your organization employs thousands of people, and I want to ask you a very tough question. Everyone agrees that we need the skills, right? And we're willing to pay 60% more if you have demonstrable skills. Now, there are always two types of skills. There are people like you who were born not with a silver spoon, but with an AI agent in their hand, right? And then there are people like me that unfortunately had no AI agent in their hand when we were born. We had to work very hard and get certifications and get our space in industry. What do you see as the readiness of industry wanting to have a certified workforce? Because we're talking about a very large scale problem. We're going to need tens of thousands of people around the world that have got adoption skills, defense skills, governance skills. What do you see within your clients?
Oh my God. So I think this is an absolute pivot point on the future of how organizations work and are structured. So we look at these companies, and just like you said, we're looking to make sure people can use the technology to their advantage, unburden them from routine tasks that the AI can manage. And we're actually giving them the technology to be able to build those agents themselves, right? And we make the technology capable of doing that. And the flip side is the risk, right? Because just like we've talked about, if you as an untrained, unprofessional, we used to talk about shadow IT, now we're introducing shadow AI in a way, where somebody could build an AI technology that if they're not careful, is going to put the data that we've got in the company at risk, and that's our most valuable thing. And this is why this is not a CISO problem. This is a company challenge, right? Because it affects the CHRO. How do I set guardrails to make sure that I encourage the employees, but I protect them, right? I don't want them to do something that will damage the company. How do I give that to them? How can we meet the CISO's requirements and at the same time enable the workforce? And that's where I think there's a balancing act to be had, because I can see examples of where people have come up with ideas, and that's the key thing. I think about all organizations and companies. The best innovation comes from the people who are doing the jobs day in, day out. They know where the problems are, they know where the technology can help them. And if they're enabled on the technology, then they can make the biggest change. And you balance that with making sure they're protecting themselves and the company, because that data that we hold is the most valuable thing. And we have seen some great examples, some terrible examples of that happening. So this isn't a CISO challenge. It's not a CTO, CIO challenge. It's everybody. It's the chief risk officer, it's the chief HR officer, it's the CFO, because they care about productivity, just as you described. So it sits as an executive challenge. And that's why the framework is not just for technicians and technical people. Yes, we've got to interpret it, but it's actually how do we make companies safe so everybody can capitalize on the technology. That's kind of how I look at it.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Adam. Karthik, I want to come real quick to you. I'm looking at the questions that are coming. A lot of questions are coming around the enforcement of AI controls, right? There are controls. Here's ADG, we have already provided the controls. We've got the MC12, we get that, right? Talk about the enforcement. How can organizations take these documents? So I've two-pronged questions. Question number one, how can an organization ingest the ADG framework and actually implement a control in their organization? That was one. Number two, the world requires a framework like ADG, right? As what Adam said, we need to propagate this out, which is why industry experts came together and built this framework collaboratively, and we made it completely free for everyone to use. How can consulting companies use this framework to help their customers, to help their organizations do better as well? So Karthik, you are a consultant yourself. Talk about how organizations can use it and how can consulting companies use it.
Sure, of course. I think this is where we understood this problem would come up. And like Adam and Madhu rightly pointed, how do we navigate the space where the consulting firms can leverage ADG? We first need to know, what are you operating on? What is your current state? Let's address what is your current state. We need to have a deeper understanding of what do you have currently and what is your plan in factoring in AI systems. So if I can share my screen, please. Can enable a minute. So I believe I just need to share my screen. So we do have an option on the framework. Let's go and quickly there.
And by the way, while you do that, you can see that almost 50% of the attendees are confirming that organizations are not prepared for the governance of autonomous or multi-agent systems. And this is not uncommon, right? And even if someone is there, they are partially prepared. So just an important point. But yeah, Karthik, please go ahead.
I think the framework itself gives them the starting point. It is to get their attention on what do they currently have. It's more of poking them into the right direction of what are the questions that you need to first ask for us to bring you to a visible layer on what you need to really govern. So the questionnaire really gets you in terms of what's the scope, what is it that you're trying to first enable and establish. Let's get the foundation there, right? Once you get that, then you talk about the minimum controls. We're talking about at an adoption level, what are the controls do you have, right? The scope is, do teams start building AI tools for actual work tasks? The answer is yes. So what is your current state? Do you have visibility? Have you not started that journey? Do you have artifact? Today, if an auditor comes to your organization and asks you, hey, since everybody is using AI tools today, can you tell me how are you securing them? And if you're not able to provide an artifact or not a technical evidence to prove that I have complete visibility of everything that leaves my organization and everything that comes into my organization, there's a gray area there. You clearly know you're not sure of the right thing. So this questionnaire is probably just to get them aligned with the fact that how do I start? Is to nail down the concepts of, okay, these are the questions I need to ask for my implementation, and this is what the outcome needs to be. So we've cut across the questionnaire through all the three pillars: adopt, defend, and govern. Just the niche important questions from a business standpoint. And what the tool eventually does is, in the last, it's going to ask you, what is the autonomy layer? Right? Everybody is developing applications within your organization. Today, if I open Claude Code, there's something called dangerously skip permissions. I just need the output. I do not care what the agent does, but I want to see the result on the screen. I want to make that application go and give me the best deep research report that I can produce to my management. But if you look at that mindset, it is about achieving the outcome and letting the agent do whatever it takes for them to go and achieve the outcome. So, what is that level of autonomy? And even if you do give human out of the loop autonomy, how are you going to control it? But that's never the game. That's never going to be an option. But most of the vibe coders that I've seen, most of the engineering teams that I've seen, they choose this, get the feature in, tell it to the business that I've achieved it, and it's working fine. But tomorrow, when there's a breakthrough or when there's an attack, you eventually come back and find out, okay, what was the cost? We didn't know that we had let this agent take autonomous action. One such is the Molt book. We've seen Molt book as one of the examples. Is it's OpenClaw started pulling out PII information from relevant Gmails, relevant databases, relevant credit card information, and throwing out to the internet. That is a concern because everything was autonomous. I give you anything, but just achieve the outcome. So this questionnaire gives you that level to question across people, process, data, and tech, and eventually gives you an output of where you stand currently. What is the ADG required you to have, and what do you currently claim that you have? There's a gap between what you claim and what you have. So the report gives you a good view of that, and it also gives you a transparent level of how did we compute the score based on the responses that we've given, and what is the score that we've given you, and how did we land at that risk score. You're not talking about likelihood and impact. This is more from an abstract perspective, but risk in terms of likelihood and impact comes at the later stage. Right? This serves as a good reference point. It starts as a good baseline foundation for organizations to start moving forward. And the output also gives you, based on the responses that you've given and what you've claimed, how does that map across the entire standards? You're talking about NIST, govern. You're talking about ISO 42001 across 8.6 to 8.2. What's the Annexure A control that we're looking at? And the last is the EU AI Act. And gives you a good indication of where should you improve? What are the things that you do not have? How should you start enabling things? So this serves as a good output for your board and your management to start really considering factoring that as a part of your organizational AI maturity assessment. Thanks, Jay.
And this is something that, by the way, I would imagine a Big Four consulting firm or, would charge a lot of money for. It's completely
Absolutely.
free. So to all attendees, use it. Yeah, use this. It's for your benefit. There was a question that came up about how do we map to EU AI Act. Well, it's on the screen, right? You can take a free assessment. There are 4 assessments. This is a organization assessment. There are 3 individual assessments. You can test your own skills, how good you are in AI program management, offensive AI, and also responsible AI governance and ethics. Madhur, I want to come back to you again. And one of the large challenges that there are in organizations in the world is that everybody has a documentation to show that, I'm ISO compliant, right? I've got all the documentations, but then application and compliance don't normally come in together, right? So give us some tips about how can organizations make sure that they say what they do and they do what they say. What has been your experience?
Well, this requires actually thorough investigation of your processes with the organization. So, for example, if you talk about any software development company who is building software, you need to make sure that every critical business software development process, which has to go through certain standard compliance, is well documented, well audited, and of course then certified, right? So every process has to be then scrutinized, and you need to make sure that every aspect of that particular, let's say if you want to have security certification for your, let's say any of the capability you are developing. So every aspect of that particular capability has to be thoroughly, vetted, tested, audited through external vendors, documented, and of course then you have to go through the certification process. But in order to do this, you have to have that kind of a know-how and expertise across all the processes and what kind of certifications you want to go for your organization, and you have to build that knowledge base. Now, frameworks like ADG and others can give you that capability and knowledge base out of the box, so that you don't have to spend fortune to get that know-how, and then build that capability within the organization in a very natural and framework-driven manner. So this is what a large enterprises also follow. They have a standard framework for a certain, let's say, certification they are targeting towards. They follow the framework and make sure that every process goes through the checks and balances which are defined in the framework, and then go for those certifications.
Thank you for that.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, what you see on the screen is actually a trick question, right? When delivery speed conflicts with security or risk concerns, how is the decision resolved? This is actually a trick question to all attendees. I'll tell you why. Most of the C-suite organizations that I've met, and we talk about AI, the ultimate question is going to be, who owns AI? Does security own AI? Adam is smiling. Does the CIO own AI? Does the CTO own AI? Or now lately, do BISOs own AI, the business information security officer? So Adam, let's get back to you. You've been talking to a lot of clients. If you look at the response, it's quite intriguing. 20% says security teams can block.
Yeah.
Imaginably, they would have more influence over it. 35 say governance body. 30% says, well, no consistent mechanism, depends on the weather. What's your take on this, Adam?
But to my view, and synthesizing all of I speak with clients every day and meet a lot, is to be really successful at this, the stakeholders, as I say, are the CEO, the CISO, the CHRO, the CTO. There's a whole bunch of people that care about this. And if you want to be really successful, you have to abstract the AI to an AI center of excellence, right? Which involves technologies, it involves business practices, it involves policies. Because the EU AI Act is not a prescriptive checkbox, it's a policy management. The Colorado AI Act is a policy, and it's how you manage the policy. And it's that oversight body that should have responsibility when you hit the buffers. And in my view, in the most successful companies, the CEO has that connection with that group, because that group are there to remove the roadblocks, right? To make the decisions for the company. So it's when you form that group and using a framework like this to build the meaning, the way that group should operate is really important. The best companies in the world will take this framework and go, great, that's going to get us 80+% of the way there, and here's how we need to enhance it for our business in our environment. But where it should sit is a cross body that cuts across all of those technology groups, all of those business groups, and includes finance as well, right? We've got to look at the ROI to know if we're doing something, if we're solving a problem that's worth solving. And that's why I think this is so much more important. And the last thing that I think is really important, and you mentioned it earlier, Karthik, is we ultimately have to have the ability to shut this stuff off, right? If an employee goes rogue and goes on a dodgy website, I can spot it really quickly, like I said. But not just that, we've all got these things to get into buildings. I can shut those off like this. And we need to be able to do that when an agent does done something malicious, and we have to do it at machine speed. And so that's why one of the things that I find a lot of clients coming to us to talk about is how we can give them the kill switch as well. And the kill switch is really important because, and it could be like, you don't want to blow away all the AI, but where some of it starts to misbehave, you need to trigger the kill switch, shut it off and block it, then understand it and bring it back to that group to decide on how do we evolve and iterate our policies, our procedures, our technology, and how we're running our organization. And so that for me is just, that's the mature thinking that needs to happen.
Thank you, Adam. So let's talk about the kill switch, right? I think we have 10 more minutes left. And this is the most interesting part of the conversation. So let me come to Madhur, right? And I'll make it an open discussion. We saw Fable 5 that happened. What really blew my mind is that when organizations are rapidly moving to deploy agents with whatever they get, boards are saying we need agents because shareholder value goes up, stock prices go up, you look really interesting, sales team says easier for us to sell and to show our customers how interesting we are. We deploy AI, we don't have the kill switch, but we're living in a world where you've already seen what happened in Moltbook, you've already seen what's already happening where AI agents are publicly revealing PII information because the human said something that the agent did not like. So two things that are nightmare situations. One, if you look at large organizations, they are shedding off human beings. We saw it in Meta, we saw it in Oracle, we saw it in all large organizations, right? And then they are spending money in getting AI agents. Well, if you press a kill switch, you don't have the people. You are going to have broken processes. So Madhur, you come from SAP, right? Half the world runs on SAP. We run on SAP, right? If there's a kill switch and my finance does not function, I have a problem because there are so many processes inside that there will be embedded AI agents. So how do you think through this from an architectural standpoint, and how should organizations think through it, Madhur?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a very key principle which we are following, and we are making sure that every AI feature which we bake into software has that feature. It's called fallback strategy. So you have to have a fallback strategy in place for an incident like exactly what happened with Fable 5. But in order to build this, it's a very complex problem to solve, right? All the agents, all the generative features which you have in your stack has to have an ability to adapt according to the model which is now available for your stack. And you should not be doing it just because of this kind of a light out scenario, but also for your cost optimization capability as well, right? We are seeing every week a new version of the model is coming better and cheaper. So there we have to have this in-bake ability of evolving our agents and your AI features to adapt and use the best and the most cost-effective model out there. So this has to be baked into your technology stack, your platform stack, whatever you are using in your enterprise, and of course you have to make sure that your security governance and your ethics capabilities are not compromised the moment you switch to another model. So all of these has to be baked in your switchover process as well. So it's a complex problem to solve, and as you rightly mentioned, right? So Fortune 500 companies use SAP to run their business, so it's very important focus for SAP. And I just want to share one research stat, right? Earlier this year, Anthropic and BCG conducted a research and in figuring out why the AI adoption is failing in large enterprises. What are the three key top factors? And AI governance came out to be one of the key factors. Organizations are not able to make most out of their AI implementation, and governance is critical to the adoption program. And framework like these can really accelerate that journey for organizations.
Thank you. Final words, Adam. Over to you. You go first because your name starts with the A.
So look, traditionally we've thought of governance as a burden and an overhead. Okay, reset your framework on what governance is. It is an enabler to fast, performant, efficient use and adoption of AI. It gives us the trust, the security. If you design the systems right with failover and redundancy, etc., then and you use it to monitor and measure the performance, financial and technical of your AI, then you can move forward with confidence. You can actually get to a point where you've got cross-business consensus and involvement and engagement, and that's how your organization of the future, you should be thinking about building it as you go forward. So don't think about governance as a burden, think about it as the enabler, think about it as protecting you, both technically and business-wise, and then you'll be in a really different place to actually capitalize on the opportunity that's there in front of you.
Thank you. I have an amazing question just come up, and I must compliment the sender, and I'm going to read it out, right? And it says, kill switches are all well and good, but as a CISO of 30 plus years experience, turning off business processes and especially inter-business processes cannot be done at the speed of IT. That's so true, right? This is what we're talking about. The business will not allow that sort of control. How can we resolve these two requirements, continuity and process and risk, when the speed of the risk is at machine speed, but the business as a human regulated control point? And this is so true. It's exactly what we were talking about earlier. On one hand, right? Because you could move so quickly. So Karthik, you're the final thought, but I thought that was a pertinent question that you might want to talk about.
So I think from a kill switch perspective, I completely understand the business risk landscape. Now we are talking about agents going out of control, right? Now the ecosystem is, when we define a kill switch, is to stop agentic behavior on that particular aspect, right? When we have a NOC team, we have a SOC team, we pretty much know what the agent's intent is. One such example, let me give you, is the other day when we were rolling out a feature and we did give out certain instructions to the agent. It came back to say, and it validated that it had done. But when I went and manually checked whether the change had happened, it did not happen, right? But how do you even uncover these, right? How do you stop that behavior? That becomes the ultimate question. Now, everything that the agent does is in a form of a markdown file given out as instructions. You are clearly calling out in English language, telling exactly what you used to do as a software engineer. Traditionally, I used to interpret business and put it as code. I completely had deterministic control, but that's now not the case. The case now is I can give you an abstract high-level goal for you to achieve, and I'm going to let the agent figure out, right? So when we say kill switch is not that, okay, you go and plug off your switch and say that this is it. You will need to have necessary relevant controls in place to pull out agentic behaviors that we have current tools do. When you know that that particular model, that particular agent is not carrying out right outcomes, you got to pull it out. You got to shelf it and have something more reasonable and more other models that you have more control over. It's clearly a clarity issue. It's somewhere gone down the road where you've not informed the agent what verification should look like. Right? You clearly have told the agent in abstract language that you got to achieve this goal, but I'll leave it to you on how you want to do it. So there are two aspects to this: is be very clear on how you do it. Your instructions are the Bible for agents. If you're not very clear on what the outcome should be, then you got to go back, relook at it, sit with your engineering team, and clearly lay out the knowns and the unknowns. So when the unknown happens, what should the agent behavior look like? I think that's the final say in terms of monitoring it.
Well, thank you very much, Karthik. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last, we've been talking about adopt, defend, and govern. Let me summarize what every single poll has shown. What the poll has shown is that governance is lacking in organizations, defense is lacking in organizations, adoption is happening at rapid speed without the proper guardrails in place, and the ownership of AI is in question. This is a mayhem scenario across the world because we are all rapidly adopting a technology that we really don't completely understand, but yet there's so much of governance that's required as a matter of law, and it's going to get worse across the world. The EU AI Act is 38 days away before the enforcement starts. 38 days, right? And yet, if you take a look at the poll, which is a cross-section of the attendees that we have today, the numbers are telling. So, in conclusion, please do visit aigovernance.ecouncil.org, and here is a free assessment that you can use to both benchmark your organization, your customer's organization, and also assess your own personal skill across adopt, defend, and govern. We really hope that you will use these tools, you will spread it to your customers, you will share it with your stakeholders, and you'll use this to be a far better, secure organization. Until we meet again, my name is Jay Bavisi. I'm the CEO and founder of VC Council. I would like to thank Adam. I'd like to thank Madhur. I'd like to thank Karthik that have spent an enormous amount of time and attention in having such a wonderful debate and discussion around secure AI. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we are calling it a day. good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are.